Russia has always sold itself as a military superpower, with thousands of tanks, advanced jets, and enough nukes to scare the world. But the war in Ukraine has ripped that image apart. What was supposed to be a modern and unstoppable force is now struggling against a much smaller opponent. From rusted-out gear dragged from storage to corruption, gutting its capabilities, Russia's war machine is turning out to be a lot weaker than anyone expected. At a glance, Russia's military looks like a powerhouse. Thousands of tanks, hundreds of aircraft, and a navy that ranks among the largest in the world make it seem like a force to be reckoned with. But numbers do not tell the full story. A lot of that equipment is ancient. Tanks like the T-62, first rolled out in the 1960s, are being dusted off and sent to the front lines to replace newer models that have been destroyed. These tanks, built for a different era, are no match for modern anti-tank weapons and drone strikes. Instead of striking fear into opponents, they have become symbols of how far Russia has fallen behind. The situation with troops is not any better. While Russia's army has grown on paper since the start of the invasion in 2022, it is not the same force that first crossed into Ukraine. The initial wave included many experienced soldiers. Now the ranks are filled with recruits who have been rushed through minimal training and sent straight to the battlefield. NATO officials have even pointed out that the overall quality of Russian forces has dropped drastically. Bigger numbers do not mean much when the troops lack the skills to back them up. Then there is the production problem. Modern warfare demands cutting-edge equipment, but Russia's defense industry is not equipped to keep up. Western sanctions have choked off access to major parts like microchips, which are essential for modern weapons. Factories are being forced to cut corners just to meet basic demands, producing weapons that are far less sophisticated than their Western counterparts. High-tech production takes time, resources, and expertise are the three things Russia's struggling economy cannot sustain over the long term. What all this adds up to is a military that looks intimidating on paper, but is losing its strength in practice. For a country that has spent decades building its reputation as a military giant, the cracks in that image are becoming impossible to ignore. But numbers are not the only issue. Technology is proving to be just as important on the modern battlefield. And in this area, Russia is falling even further behind. In the ongoing conflict, Ukraine has established a major advantage in drone warfare, completely altering the dynamics on the battlefield. This technological edge has enabled Ukrainian forces to conduct precise strikes and gather important intelligence, often throwing off Russian troops. Ukraine's success in drone operations stems from its rapid innovation and effective deployment of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. Ukrainian forces have utilized a variety of drones, from small reconnaissance models to larger armed variants, to execute targeted attacks and monitor enemy movements. Notably, Ukraine has developed drones capable of dispersing molten thermite to destroy enemy cover or deploying grenade launchers from a distance, bypassing electronic jamming defenses. On the other hand, Russia's drone capabilities have been slowed down by reliance on outdated and improvised equipment. Investigations into downed Russian drones have revealed the use of consumer-grade microchips from Western companies, indicating a lack of access to advanced military-grade technology. This dependence on commercial components raises questions about the reliability and durability of Russian drones and also exposes vulnerabilities to electronic warfare tactics. Ukraine's innovative strategies have further widened the technological gap. The development and deployment of AI-augmented systems have enhanced the autonomy and precision of Ukrainian drones, allowing them to locate and strike targets even in electronically fortified zones. These advancements have increased their strike success rates, boosting operational effectiveness. Russia's approach has been largely reactive, struggling to counter Ukraine's technological advancements. While Russia has attempted to deploy its own drones, such as the Iranian-made Shahed-136, these efforts have been met with limited success. Ukrainian forces have effectively intercepted and neutralized these drones, often using advanced electronic warfare systems and counter-drone tactics. The disparity extends to precision technologies and intelligence systems. Ukraine's integration of AI and advanced targeting software has enabled more accurate and efficient operations. In contrast, Russia's reliance on outdated technology and improvised solutions has resulted in less effective targeting and intelligence gathering, further diminishing its operational capabilities. This growing technological divide has had tangible impacts on the battlefield. Ukraine's ability to conduct precise drone strikes has disrupted Russian supply lines, targeted high-value assets, and inflicted major casualties. Conversely, Russia's drone operations have been less effective, often resulting in limited strategic gains and higher attrition rates. But it does not end there. For decades, funds meant to build and equip a world-class army have vanished into the pockets of oligarchs and shady contractors, leaving the military hollowed out from the inside. The scale of the problem is huge, and the consequences are playing out in real time on the battlefield. Take one of the most popular examples, the fake explosives. Military officials awarded a contract to a supplier who promised to deliver explosives for training exercises. Instead, the crates were filled with blocks of wood. It sounds like a joke, but it is real. When troops tried to use the equipment, they discovered the switcheroo. Too late to prevent embarrassment and wasted time. The money saved by the supplier, of course, did not go back to the state. It likely ended up in a hidden offshore account. Then there's the case of tires. Russian military vehicles, including important supply trucks and armored personnel carriers, have been breaking down because they are fitted with substandard, worn-out tires. In one instance, an entire convoy was stranded in mud because multiple vehicles suffered tire failures at the same time. And why wouldn't they? The contractors had cut corners, using cheaper materials while pocketing the savings. This corruption doesn't stop with equipment. It runs through every level of the Russian military system. Soldiers are sent to the front lines with poor quality gear and inadequate supplies, including food rations that are expired or outright inedible. Reports of rusty helmets and poorly fitted body armor are common. Even basic necessities, like uniforms, are often in short supply because someone along the chain of command diverted the funds meant to produce them. And it gets worse. The living conditions for Russian troops are often awful. Instead of well-maintained barracks, many soldiers are housed in buildings that are falling apart. Heating systems do not work, plumbing is unreliable, and the food, when it is available, comes in insufficient portions. The money allocated for these facilities is routinely siphoned off, leaving soldiers to fend for themselves. Corruption has also eaten away at the command structure. Promotions in the Russian military often go to those who can pay for them, not those who are most qualified. That means the people leading troops into battle may not have the skills to do so effectively. It is a reason for disaster when unqualified commanders make important decisions, and the rank-and-file soldiers know it. Trust in leadership has eroded to the point where many troops are simply trying to survive, not win. The ripple effects are everywhere. Poor equipment, bad leadership, and low morale combine to create a force that struggles to function. Soldiers feel like expendable pawns in a game they cannot win, especially when they see their superiors getting rich while they are left to fight with broken gear. However, corruption is not a side problem for Russia's military. It is the core issue. It sabotages every part of the system, from the top brass to the boots on the ground. And on the modern battlefield, where precision and professionalism are everything, that kind of rot cannot be hidden for long. Russia's superweapons, like the Poseidon nuclear torpedo and the S-400 missile defense system, have been presented as revolutionary technologies that could tilt the balance of power in their favor. On the surface, these weapons sound like something out of science fiction, unstoppable, unparalleled, and deadly. But when examined closely, the reality is far less impressive. The Poseidon torpedo is one of the most talked about weapons in Russia's arsenal. It is described as a nuclear-powered underwater drone capable of traveling thousands of miles undetected and delivering a warhead large enough to trigger devastating tsunamis. But despite years of development, there is little evidence that the Poseidon has moved beyond the prototype stage. Official updates are scarce, and the few reactor tests that have been reported lack details about how close the weapon is to operational status. Without real-world testing, Poseidon remains more of a concept than an actual battlefield asset. Meanwhile, the resources sunk into its development do nothing to address Russia's more immediate military challenges, like outdated vehicles and supply shortages. The S-400 missile defense system has been marketed as one of the most sophisticated air defense platforms in the world. Capable of targeting aircraft, drones, and missiles, it is often highlighted as a key pillar of Russia's military might. But in Ukraine, its limitations have become glaringly apparent. The system has repeatedly failed to intercept modern drones and precision-guided munitions deployed by Ukrainian forces. Reports suggest that the S-400, while effective under ideal conditions, struggles against unconventional threats and saturation tactics that overwhelm its detection and response capabilities. Instead of being the invincible shield it is portrayed as, the S-400's shortcomings have exposed it as a flawed system, particularly in fast-evolving combat scenarios. Russia's track record with other superweapons tells a similar story. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile, another high-profile weapon, was initially introduced as virtually unstoppable due to its speed and maneuverability. However, during the ongoing war, Ukraine's defenses have reportedly intercepted multiple Kinzhal missiles using older Patriot systems provided by Western allies. The problem with these superweapons goes beyond their questionable effectiveness. Their development and promotion serve a larger purpose: propaganda. By showcasing advanced technologies, Russia aims to project strength and intimidate its adversaries, even if the practical applications of these weapons remain unproven. This emphasis on appearance over substance distracts from more pressing needs. While billions are poured into projects like Poseidon and Kinzhal, Russian soldiers are sent into battle with unreliable vehicles, outdated rifles, and a huge lack of basic supplies. The resources allocated to flashy superweapons do little to help troops who are already struggling on the ground. And this is not the first time the nation has faced such challenges. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union faced major challenges in technological development, particularly in the semiconductor industry. While the US was rapidly advancing in microelectronics, the USSR struggled to keep pace. In the 1950s, Soviet scientists and spies began infiltrating US semiconductor companies and research centers. By 1958, Khrushchev even built an entire city, Zelenograd, around semiconductor production. However, a year later, the CIA assessed that Soviet semiconductor technology was often crude copies of Western designs and remained 5 to 7 years behind the US. This pattern of copying Western technology without genuine innovation led to systemic inefficiencies. The Soviet approach of reverse engineering and imitation resulted in products that were often outdated by the time they were deployed. This lag hindered the USSR's ability to compete in the global tech arena and contributed to its eventual economic decline. Fast forward to today, and Russia appears to be repeating these mistakes. The reliance on acquiring foreign technology, rather than developing advanced innovations, has left Russia vulnerable to sanctions and trade restrictions. For instance, the country's dependence on imported microprocessors for military equipment has been a major weakness. Efforts to overcome these challenges by sourcing components from consumer electronics or engaging in trade with countries like China have not provided a sustainable solution. The lesson from history is clear. Stealing technology and playing catch-up does not work in the long term. Without a strong framework for innovation and development, a nation cannot achieve technological sovereignty. Only through such efforts can Russia hope to break free from the cycle of imitation and truly compete on the global stage. Russia's military once stood as a symbol of global power, but years of corruption, outdated strategies, and over-reliance on propaganda have damaged its foundation. From struggling to sustain its arsenal, to losing ground in technological innovation, the cracks in its war machine are now impossible to ignore. As these issues worsen, the long-term effectiveness of Russia's military remains deeply uncertain, especially in the face of a determined opponent like Ukraine. Don't forget to subscribe, and for more insights into the evolving state of modern warfare and its impact on geopolitics, be sure to check out our next video.